Once a year, in ancient Sumer, the king's authority came up for renewal, not by vote, not by conquest, by a woman. The high priestess of the goddess Inanna held in her willing participation the legitimacy of the entire kingdom. Without her, the king could not rule. Without the sacred marriage, the ritual union between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, enacted by the two of them at the summit of the city's great ziggurat, the earth would not be fertile, the rains would not come, the harvests would fail. His authority was not his own. It was borrowed annually from the goddess. This is the Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage, one of the most important, most beautiful, and most thoroughly erased traditions in human history. Today, we go inside it completely. To understand what happened between them, you need to understand who they each were. The king of Sumer was not a monarch in the modern sense. He did not own the city. He was its steward, appointed to protect it from external threats, to administer justice within it, and above all, to maintain its sacred relationship with the divine. That last responsibility was the most important of the three. A king who failed at justice or protection was a weak king. A king who failed in his relationship with the goddess was a king who could not be legitimately crowned at all. His power was conditional, annually renewed, and the condition was her. The high priestess held the most senior religious office in the temple hierarchy, and in Sumer, the religious and the political were inseparable. She managed the temple's enormous economic operations, agricultural estates, grain stores, the employment of craftspeople, scribes, and administrators. She was educated, reading, writing, composing. Her authority was real, structural, and publicly recognized. When she walked through the city, she was seen as what she was, the person through whom the goddess was present in the human world. She was not the king's subordinate. She was his counterpart. He held the political and military sphere. She held the sacred sphere. And in a world where the sacred was the foundation of everything else, her sphere was the one that mattered most. The place where they came together was the ziggurat, and understanding what it was changes everything about understanding what happened there. The ziggurat rose at the heart of the city, a massive stepped tower of mud brick, tier upon tier, climbing toward the sky. In the flat landscape of the Mesopotamian plain, where the horizon stretched unbroken in every direction and there were no natural mountains, the ziggurat was the only place you could climb toward heaven. It was not simply a large building. It was the cosmic mountain, built by human hands with human devotion as the meeting point between heaven and earth, the axis of the world. At its summit was the sacred chamber, the bridal chamber of the goddess, the room where the sacred marriage took place, the point closest to heaven in the entire known world. The ziggurat of still partially stands today. The White Temple at Uruk dates to approximately 3200 BCE, older than the pyramids of Egypt. These structures were built by the most sophisticated civilization on Earth at that time, the first to develop writing, codified law, large-scale agriculture, and complex urban life simultaneously. Their scale speaks to how seriously the people who built them took what happened inside them. The preparation for the sacred marriage was itself a sacred act. The king hymns of Sumer, sacred poetry written in the voice of Inanna, translated in the 20th century by the Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer after decades of painstaking work with cuneiform tablets, describe the preparation for the sacred marriage in extraordinary, loving detail. They are the oldest love poetry in human history. They are also liturgical texts, both things simultaneously. The high priestess was ritually bathed. Sacred oils were applied to her skin. She was dressed in Inanna's 7 sacred garments, the same 7 pieces of divine regalia that Inanna surrenders gate by gate in her descent to the underworld, the same 7 she reclaims on her return. Each garment was a layer of sacred identity. To be dressed in them was to become the goddess, present in human form. Her hair was arranged, She was adorned with lapis lazuli, the deep blue stone the Sumerians associated with the divine, with the sky, with Inanna herself. The bridal chamber at the summit was prepared around her. Fresh linens, fragrant herbs, cedar perhaps, the most prized wood in the ancient world, its scent carrying associations of the sacred. The chamber was made beautiful, not as decoration, as reverence, because beauty was sacred to Inanna, and the space prepared for her union was itself an act of devotion. The king underwent his own preparation, bathed, anointed, robed. He did not approach this as a ritual to be performed. He approached it as a goddess to be received. The texts make clear that he came with humility. His worthiness was being assessed. The legitimacy of his entire reign depended not on his own power, but on her willing reception of him. A man's authority derived from a woman's consent. This was not an idea. It was the operating theology of the world's first civilization. The sacred marriage was not a private ceremony, conducted behind closed doors. The king walked in procession through the streets of the city to the ziggurat, in full view, accompanied by music, witnessed by the people. Lyres, drums, the streets full. The community had been preparing alongside the king and the high priestess. This was their ceremony too. The people of Uruk understood what was about to happen at the summit of the ziggurat. They understood that the fertility of their fields, the health of their livestock, the abundance of their harvest was connected to this union. They had a stake in it, and they were present for it, not as passive observers of a state ritual, but as genuine participants in a sacred act that concerned them directly. When the king descended from the ziggurat, the city celebrated. The king hymns describe it plainly. The people spend the day in plenty, feasting, music continuing, the sacred marriage enacted, the cosmic order renewed, the earth's fertility secured for another year. The celebration was the community's expression of gratitude and relief and joy, all three at once. Think about what this gave people. Once a year, the entire city gathered around an act of sacred union between the divine masculine and feminine. Their survival, the literal fertility of the land, was understood as flowing from the honoring of the goddess and the willing participation of her high priestess. The earth did not produce because it was forced to. It produced because it was honored. That is a completely different relationship with the natural world than the one most of us have inherited. The land was not a resource to be extracted. It was a living, sacred presence to be entered into relationship with, through reverence, through ritual, through the annual renewal of the bond between the human and the divine. And when that renewal was completed, everyone ate. At the heart of all of this was a theology of embodied divinity, described with great scholarly care by Tikva Frymer-Kensky in her landmark study, In the Wake of the Goddesses. The divine was not separate from the physical world. It was present within it, expressed through it, enacted most fully in the creative union of masculine and feminine, because that union mirrored the generative act of the cosmos itself. In this theology, the body was holy. Sexuality was sacred. The creative act of two human beings was understood as a participation in the creative act of the universe, not a concession to human weakness, not something to be transcended. The most sacred act there was. This was the precise opposite of what replaced it. When the sacred marriage was suppressed and the goddess was removed from the divine order, the body became the site of sin. Sexuality became the mechanism of the fall. The high priestess, through whom the divine feminine was present in the world, became, in the new theological vocabulary, a prostitute. Sacred sexuality became the thing from which the faithful had to be protected. That inversion did not happen by accident. It was deliberate, systematic, and its consequences have shaped the Western world for 3,000 years. What this world tells us is not complicated. Men and women were equal in their sacred authority, each holding a sphere that the other depended on, neither complete without the other. And women's wisdom was not merely acknowledged. It was understood as the source of everything the community needed to survive: the earth's fertility, the king's legitimacy, the community's hope. That is not a distant ideal or a modern aspiration. It was a lived reality, practiced for centuries in the world's first civilization. We have not had anything like it since.